Hi, welcome to Take 5, where we daily consider devotional thoughts from Oswald Chambers' book, My Utmost for His Highest. Today is November 11th, and the title of today's devotional is The Supreme Climb. He said, "Take now your son," Genesis 22, verse 2. The focus first regards the time of God directing Abram to offer up his son Isaac as a sacrifice. A likely misunderstanding held is that Isaac was only 5 or 6 years old. More so, however, he was at least a teenager or perhaps even 30 or more years old. This evidences as well tremendous faith by Isaac in his father's relationship with God. Dr. Chambers begins with God's command, "Take now, not later." Chambers raises the point, it is incredible how we debate. We know something is right, but we try to find excuses for not doing it immediately. God may tell us to share with a friend or a relative about what the Lord is doing in our life, but we are able to think up reasons to not do it right now, and at times waiting until it is too late. O.C. says if we are able to climb the height God reveals, it can never be done later. It must be done now. This was the takeaway for me. My delays and procrastinations can keep me from climbing to the heights of service that God wants for me. I fail to become all that God wants me to be, at least for now. And O.C. says the sacrifice must be worked through our will before we actually perform it. Abram had to initially accept in his heart that what God was directing him to do was God's will. He couldn't be resistant or wavering over it. You've got to be doing what God directs with a whole heart. So Abraham rose early in the morning and went to the place of which God had told him. And with that, Dr. C observes, oh, the wonderful simplicity of Abraham. When God spoke, he did not confer with flesh and blood. Beware when you want to confer with flesh and blood, or even your own thoughts, insights, or understandings, anything that is not based on your personal relationship with God. These are all things that compete with and hinder obedience to God. The conferring with flesh and blood is when we try to find one who will convince us not to do what God has told us that we need to do. We realize that God has directed us in a matter, but we don't want to do it, so we try to find someone else who will agree likewise, and often it will be an unbeliever who wouldn't recognize God's voice anyway. Chambers further points out that Abraham did not choose what the sacrifice would be. To sacrifice his son was not the selection of Abram. It was the directive of God. We must always guard against self-chosen service for God. Self-sacrifice may be a disease that impairs your service. If we choose of our own that we are to go to some foreign country to serve as a missionary, but it hasn't been God's directive, then it will lack success. We need a sensitivity to God that comes from time spent with Him in prayer and meditation. Chambers wants us to realize and accept that not everything that God directs us in is going to be easy to accept and do, saying if God has made your cup sweet, drink it with grace, or even if He has made it bitter, drink it in communion with Him. If the providential will of God means a hard and difficult time for you, go through it. That's challenging to accept, that a hard road ahead of us can actually be God's will for us. But if it is, He has purpose and reason in the difficulties. Our author warns us, though, never decide the place of your own martyrdom, as if to say, I will only go to there, but no farther. God chose the test for Abraham, and Abraham neither delayed nor protested, but steadily obeyed. Never set borders on your obedience. God, I'll do this much for you, but no more. For you can be falling short of a blessing God has for you by not holding to task. Chambers says if you are not living in touch with God, it is easy to blame Him or to pass judgment on Him. You must go through the trial before you have any right to pronounce a verdict, because by going through the trial, you learn to know God better. Hardships in our life are not pointless when they come from God, and once we go through it, we will have been drawn nearer to God. OC closes with, God is working in us to reach His highest goals until His purpose and our purpose become one. We will not be able to know God's full purpose for us if we continue to hesitate, wishing for how it used to be. Thanks for being here today. Now may God's grace and peace be ours as we seek to live our utmost for His highest. Have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye now.